Hi, I'm Rebecca, I'm the psych coach, and today I am going to be talking to you about red flags. Some red flags that you should be looking out for when it comes to you dating or when it comes to you being in the early stages of a relationship. Plenty of people have red flags that are very personal to them. It could be a red flag based on your own experiences of a relationship. It could be a red flag when it comes to your family's expectations on who you're dating. But there are some generic red flags that I think go across the board and are things that people should be looking out for when it comes to their new relationship or dating. Red flag number one is the person you're talking to speaking in a very negative way about their exes. Plenty of people have exes they would rather not remember or have had a rough time with or speak badly about. But if you are talking to someone who has only got bad things to say about every ex they've been with, that's not great. It's refreshing actually if you're able to talk to someone who recognises that yes, they've had a few exes, some weren't particularly great, a couple didn't pan out, but end of. What's not great is if you're talking to someone who is absolutely enraged or goes on an absolute tangent about how bad their exes are or how terrible they behaved or how mad they were. That is a bit of a red flag. It's a bit of a warning sign, because what you want is someone who is able to talk about their exes in a sort of a relatively okay way, fine, sometimes in a bad way, but not where they totally put all blame on their exes for all having been bad people and they're the saint in all of it. That's a bit concerning. Red flag number two is jealousy. Everyone experiences jealousy. It's a perfectly normal emotion to have. Jealousy is where we feel very protective about the romantic relationship we're in and we don't want that to be threatened. But if you've got someone who is asserting levels of jealousy that you're not used to, that you sort of chalk down to, oh, it's just sort of how much they like me, but that actually make you feel quite uncomfortable, listen to that. Excessive jealousy is really unhealthy, because excessive jealousy at its extreme will lead you to feeling quite confined and constrained in the relationship, because your ex may end up putting measures in place to stop them from feeling jealous. Jealousy is not healthy when it's really pronounced, when it's ongoing, and when it results in expectations of behaviour change from you. Try and look out for the jealousy that triggers your anxiety, because that's the jealousy, that's your sort of gut instinct saying, actually, this is the jealousy that isn't okay. You know the difference between a jealousy that's okay, where you think, okay, they're just a bit envious and they're able to talk about that and they're able to express it and that's understandable, and the jealousy that is not okay because it's actually restricting your movements, or indeed it's causing you untoward anxiety. That needs to stop. And if your partner's expressing it a lot, they need to do something about it, which could include getting therapy and seeking help for it. Red flag number three is boundary pushing. If the person you are dating or in a new relationship with simply doesn't listen to your boundaries, you say you don't want to do something, yet they go ahead and book it or ask you to do it anyway. You say that you don't like being spoken to in a certain way, yet they go ahead and continue to do that. You asserting that you need some space alone at the weekend to do your own thing, yet they insist on turning up at your door. Now, those things aren't necessarily really bad. It doesn't mean that you're with someone who's inherently bad, but boundary pushing isn't a good thing. You want someone who is able to respect your boundaries, who's able to hear what you're asking, and who is ideally able to meet your needs. So constant boundary pushing can be a bit of a red flag, and it may even be that that presents itself in the early days of dating, where you say you don't want something, yet the person overrides it and does what you haven't asked for them to do. Listen in on that. If you notice yourself becoming frustrated, try and nip it in the bud earlier on and reassert the boundary. If they don't listen to it, then of course implement consequences to that. Red flag number four is anger management issues. It's not particularly attractive seeing people really lose it. If you're talking to someone who is talking with pride about their anger outbursts that they've had and the consequences of their anger, or indeed you see a first-hand display of it where they get outrageously angry at something that doesn't really warrant that level of a reaction, That is concerning. It's also concerning if you see it, if you're privy to it quite early on in the relationship, because it would suggest that the person doesn't think there is anything wrong with what they're doing. Anger management issues are unattractive and they can be very toxic in a relationship, of course, if the anger then becomes aimed at you. See anger management issues as a warning sign, and certainly see it as a warning sign if the person you're talking to seems to gloat in their lack of ability to control themselves. And warning sign number 5 is self-interest. Self-interest is where the other person is so focused on their own needs and so focused on telling their story and so focused on what they want from an evening or what they want from a date that they actually don't really remember that you're there. They don't take your needs into account. It's an unattractive trait, and someone who is very self-interested, self-obsessed, self-focused, call it what you will, and doesn't take your needs into account isn't going to be someone that's going to meet your needs throughout your relationship, or at least it's not very likely to. So look out for that. If you pick up that someone is really self-interested, that they're not really expressing much of an interest in you, that they are quite disregarding of what you want in favour of what they want, that it's all about them and the stories that they've got to tell and they're not particularly interested in what you've got to say, who wants that? Avoid people who are really, really self-interested and who don't have a regard for you. It's not attractive, and it's certainly not the makings of a good, healthy, satisfying and equal relationship. These are 5 red flags, and I don't want to sort of scare you into running a mile as soon as one of those red flags present themselves, but register it. If there are multiple red flags, you need to listen to that instead of doing what you may have done historically, which is ignore them and hope for the best. If the red flags are dominant, make a decision about what you're going to do about it, and that may well be that you decide to pull back from the person that you're dating. That seems perfectly reasonable to do. You've got to think about what's best for you and what's consistent with your goal of a long-term satisfying relationship. If you've enjoyed today's tips, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I will give you plenty more tips on how you can use psychology on a day-to-day basis.